Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 30th of May. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Early voting for next week's local elections is now open for a two-day period. It marks the first time an early voting system has been put in place for local elections. In a bleak assessment, President Park Geun-hye says another North Korean nuclear test would spark a nuclear arms race in Northeast Asia. Plus, North Korea makes a deal with Japan to investigate the fate of Japanese citizens kidnapped by Pyongyang decades ago. Japan will ease some sanctions and provide aid if the probe goes well. Our top story this morning, Koreans have been heading to the polls on this Friday as an early voting system that doesn't require prior registration begins for the first time in Korea's local election history. Those unable to cast their ballot on election day, June 4th, can head to any of the 3,500 polling stations open nationwide from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. On election day, however, voters may only cast their ballots at their designated neighbourhood polling station. The location of the polling booths can be found on the National Election Commission's website, and voters need only bring their resident registration card with them. The two-day early voting period will end at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Now, President Park Geun-hye has issued a stark warning. She says that if North Korea makes good on its threat to conduct a new form of nuclear test, it'll almost certainly trigger a nuclear arms race in the region. Park Ji-won tells us more.
President Park Geun-hye has warned another nuclear test by North Korea would have a huge impact on the security landscape in Northeast Asia. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal this week, President Park said a new test would have a domino effect with North Korea's neighbors feeling compelled to develop their own nuclear weapons to arm themselves against such a clear threat. She warned it would be difficult to prevent such a scenario from playing out as, quote, North Korea would effectively be crossing the Rubicon if they were to conduct another nuclear test. She added, a new test would also make the six-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization irrelevant. She said Seoul was closely cooperating with the other members of the six-party talks on a number of levels. The president singled out China's role in resolving the issue, as Beijing exerts huge influence on the regime. China is North Korea's biggest trade partner, accounting for 90% of the regime's external trade. She added that China has firmly expressed that it won't accept a nuclear North Korea and will take steps to deter Pyongyang from going ahead with another test. The South Korean leader promised to forge ahead with her trust-building policy with the North and seek out ways to boost inner Korean economic ties. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says North Korea has agreed to reopen a probe into the kidnapping of Japanese citizens in the 1970s and 1980s. North Korea says that if it finds any surviving abductees, they will be returned to Japan. In return, Japan may lift some sanctions on North Korea and send the country humanitarian aid. Shin Se-min reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says that North Korea has agreed to reopen an investigation on the Japanese citizens abducted by the North decades ago, a possible breakthrough in a bitter dispute between the two nations. In a brief statement to reporters Thursday evening, Abe announced that the agreement is just a first step towards resolving the abduction case.
Until the day comes that the families of those abductees can hold their children in their arms, our mission is not over. Since the beginning, we have been determined to pursue this goal and believe that this is a solid first step towards that.
Soon after, North Korea's state news agency, the KCNA, reported the two countries came to terms in lifting some sanctions on Pyongyang once the probe is launched. Japan's chief cabinet secretary separately told reporters that Japan will even consider providing humanitarian aid depending on the progress of the investigation.
We will look into canceling the special sanctions against North Korea and the sanctions against humanitarian vessels from North Korea to enter into Japan.
Pyongyang had promised before to reopen the investigation in 2008, but never did. The North had admitted in 2002 that it kidnapped 13 Japanese nationals in the 1970s and 80s to help train spies, 5 of whom returned to Japan. The country had insisted that the remaining 8 had died. Tokyo, however, claims that at least 17 people were kidnapped and has demanded for those still being held to be released. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, staying with that story, the United States has publicly backed the North Korea-Japan deal to investigate the abduction cases. At a daily press briefing on Thursday, State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki said the U.S. supports Japan's efforts to resolve its long-standing issues with North Korea in a transparent manner. She said the U.S. has been in close consultations with Japan and its other allies over this issue. That said, diplomatic sources in Washington have told Seoul-based Yonhap news agency that the U.S. government is concerned the deal could negatively affect efforts to pressure Pyongyang to give up its nuclear program. Now, lawmakers at Korea's National Assembly have agreed to hold a full and thorough investigation into last month's Sewol-ho ferry disaster. The 90-day probe will begin next Monday. A plenary session of the National Assembly passed a proposal by an overwhelming majority of 224 out of 226 participating lawmakers, with only 2 abstentions. The agreement comes after days of wrangling between rival parties over whether to include specific names of witnesses in the joint proposal. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, had been demanding the inclusion of Presidential Chief of Staff Kim Ki-chun. The rival Saenuri Party insisted on leaving the selection of witnesses to a special parliamentary committee. As a compromise, the 2 sides agreed to subject presidential office officials to the probe, with the head, Kim Ki-chun, being required to report to hearings. Meanwhile, authorities have so far been unable to track down Yoo Byung-on, the practical owner of the sunken ferry, who remains, it is presumed, on the run. But prosecutors have tracked down his assets, which total tens of millions of dollars, over $200 million, and have granted approval to freeze them. For the latest on the investigation, here's our Ji Myung-gil.
Korean prosecutors have been given approval to freeze more than $200 million worth of assets held by the owner family of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. Yoo Byung-on, the head of Cheonghaejin Marine Company, which operated the ill-fated ferry, and his family are suspected of having accumulated at least $234 million worth of earnings through various crimes, both at home and abroad. A district court in Incheon on Thursday granted a request by the Incheon District Prosecutor's Office to freeze the assets of Yoo and his 3 children, to prevent them from stashing away cash or real estate holdings before trials. Yoo and his 3 children, Seomna, Daegyun, and Hyuk-gi, are wanted on a string of corruption charges and irregularities that are believed to have contributed to the sinking of the ferry. It is all part of an effort to hold the fugitive family criminally liable for the deadly April 16th disaster. Meanwhile, a French court has rejected a request by Yoo Byung-on's eldest daughter, Seomna, to be released on bail. The process for having her extradited to Korea began Wednesday, but could take up to a year. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Global credit ratings agency Moodys says Korea will join the ranks of advanced economies by the year 2018. Speaking to reporters in Seoul on Thursday, Moodys Senior Vice President Thomas Byrne said Korea will catch up to countries like France in terms of GDP per person in just 3 to 4 years' time. He attributed the development to Korea's the Korean government's policies and the country's competitiveness, adding that Korea has maintained more rapid growth compared to other G20 nations. Burns said he expects the country's GDP to grow 3.8% this year. That's slightly higher than recent predictions by local, private and state-run think tanks. Now, buffering and waiting even a few minutes for something to download may be consigned to the past in Korea in a few years' time. The country's largest mobile operator, SK Telecom, says it will commercialize a fifth generation or 5G mobile network by the year 2020. This will be the first of its kind in the world. The president of the telecommunications operator, Ha Sung-min, says the 5G network will offer a communication speed 1,000 times faster than the current 4G systems. This means users will be able to download an entire movie in just 1 second. The SK Telecom official also said the mobile communication provider will open a new era of so-called ICT-nomics based on the 5G network. He says information and communication technology will become the center of the entire economy by organically connecting people to all things. Staying with some tech news now, and the evolution of mobile messaging over the past few years has been nothing short of staggering. It quickly jumped from basic text messages and smiley faces to free international phone calls and even mobile banking. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports on what we can expect next.
Koreans usually express their congratulations to newlyweds by giving them cash gifts enclosed in an envelope. However, this tradition may change with the evolution of mobile messengers, which now offers the newest feature of financial services. Korea's #1 mobile messenger, Kakao, introduced a way for users to trade stocks in February, called Stocks Plus Kakao, and said they'd be able to conduct money transfers through an application in the latter half of this year. Users can deposit about $490 into their Kakao Bank wallet and can transfer up to $89 a day to their acquaintances. The service is expected to be widely used by Koreans for common acts such as sending gifts of condolence or congratulations to their family and friends. Users can then transfer the received money straight into their personal banking account the next day. Kakao is just one example of how the evolution of mobile messengers is expected to pave a new tradition and way of social exchange. It may even rival existing platforms like internet banking and home trading systems for stocks. Here in Korea, home to some of the world's most tech-savvy consumers, 8 out of 10 people use their smartphones to do some of their banking. The Bank of Korea says the number of smartphone banking users exceeded 40 million this year for the very first time. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Some seriously state-of-the-art military equipment is being showcased at a huge defense exhibition underway now on the outskirts of the capital, Seoul. Opening the expo on Thursday, President Park Geun-hye pledged to open a new era in the defense field. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
President Park Geun-hye at the opening ceremony of the Korea Defense Technology Exhibition in Kintex, northwest of Seoul, on Thursday, emphasized the importance of civilian and military technology cooperation.
국방 분야의 우수한 기술이 민간에 적용되면 지금까지 없었던 새로운 가치가 창출될 수 있습니다. 그동안 우리나라는 꾸준히 선진 국방 기술을 축적해 왔고 수준 높은 민간 과학기술 역량을 보유하고 있기 때문에 민군 기술 협력의 시너지는 매우 크다고 할 수 있습니다.
The technical cooperation began in 1970 and has created over $1 billion in added value.
Over the past 40 years, we have invested $1.5 billion and in return made $18 billion, a 16-fold increase in economic effect.
The defense industry also created tens of thousands of jobs, boosting Korea's economy. Just last year alone, Korea's defense industry's total value was worth over $34 billion. Jointly hosted by the Science and Defense Ministries, the exhibition displays thousands of military gadgetry, with some aim to significantly enhance military performance in the near future.
I'm wearing state-of-the-art bulletproof equipment called a super soldier. With this strapped on, a soldier is not only better protected, but they can march much further and carry much heavier weight.
The exhibition gives the public a small glimpse at the Korean military's capabilities in defense technology and will be open to the public for 4 days through June 1st. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News, Paju.
Now, achieving peace and prosperity anywhere in the world is a tall task, and Asia is absolutely no different. Decades-old territorial and historical disputes continue to fuel tensions between the major players in the region. For discussions on ways to ensure we all get along, world leaders and experts are gathered on Korea's resort island of Jeju for a 3-day peace forum. Connie Kim reports.
Under this year's theme of Designing New Asia, the 9th Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity kicked off Thursday. At the opening ceremony, former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard and former Chinese Foreign Minister Li Jiaoxing called for rising conflicts in the region to be resolved peacefully, including the North Korea issue.
The new leader, Kim Jong-un, comes across as both dangerous and erratic. It is important that China and others in the region explain to their neighbours the pace and scope of their military modernisation to build confidence and trust.
China's rise in power and its territorial disputes in the East and South China Seas were the focus during a discussion that followed the opening ceremony.
The rise of powerful nations in the West came at the expense of other countries. As a peace-loving nation, China has never sought to invade other countries. The progress and development realized by China came peacefully.
Regarding its territorial disputes, the former foreign minister said China had sovereignty over the areas.
There is free navigation in the South China Sea, so we always welcome this. However, interfering in the territory is unfair behavior. We need to resolve this through diplomacy.
For peace to be realized in Asia, the speakers agreed that regional economic partnerships and free trade pacts were positive ways to enhance cooperation and diffuse tensions. Amid a number of territorial and historical conflicts in the region, world leaders and experts have gathered to discuss ways to resolve the differences for the sake of peace and prosperity. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News, Jeju.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following this morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. So, Eunice, Ukraine's new president has issued a statement following the country's worst loss of life in terms of government forces after rebels shot down an army helicopter.
That's right, Mark. President-elect Petro Poroshenko said this was a moment of deep sorrow, extending his condolences to the families of those 14 killed. According to Ukraine's Union News Agency, he called the rebels who have claimed responsibility for the attack bandits and enemies of the Ukrainian people who will not go unpunished. The helicopter was carrying Ukrainian soldiers and an army general for a troop rotation, according to authorities. And in a separate development, diplomatic talks are reported to be underway between representatives of Ukraine, Russia, and the EU in Berlin to resolve a growing dispute over Moscow's gas supplies to Kiev. U.S. intelligence officials say the only contact it found with former NSA contractor Edward Snowden was a brief email inquiry about training materials. The email, released by the U.S. National Security Agency, apparently shows Snowden asking a question about legal authorities and suggests that it did not show a whistleblower raising concerns about a spy program or a law. The NSA statement follows Snowden's first TV interview with a U.S. network, which you just saw there, during which he told NBC's Brian Williams he had reported there were real problems with the way the NSA was interpreting its legal authorities. The 30-year-old fugitive also underlined he has no relationship with the Russian government, never passed down intelligence documents, nor received any money from Kremlin, although he had been in hiding in Russia now for nearly a year. More deadly attacks by Islamic militant group Boko Haram. This time, 3 villages in Nigeria's northeastern state of Borno were targeted in early morning raids, killing 35 people. At least 26 were killed in the village of Gumushi alone, according to one military officer who said militants dressed in military uniform shot at residents as they tried to flee and set homes ablaze using patrol bombs. According to Nigerian officials, Boko Haram, which is sympathetic to al-Qaeda but not an official affiliate, has fighters numbering in the hundreds to thousands. Pakistan's leader is speaking out about a stoning death of a woman for refusing an arranged marriage that has shocked the world. Farzana Parveen was 3 months pregnant when she was stoned by her family members in a so-called honor killing in front of a court in Lahore. She and her chosen husband were there to contest a related court case. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif called the killing totally unacceptable and ordered the Chief Minister of Punjab province to submit a report immediately. According to the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, there were more than 800 such honor killings in the country last year.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team. Now, not only did they lose to Tunisia in the final home tune-up match on Wednesday, 22-year-old Kim Jin-soo will not be heading over to Brazil due to his injury. Now, the South Korean defender, who's ailing from an ankle injury, will not be able to heal in time for the World Cup, according to the team doctor, and will be taken off the World Cup roster. Instead, added onto the roster is Park Geun-hye of Mainz, who many consider to be the biggest snub in the 23-man roster. Although Park is also recovering from an injury, the KFA believe that he will be able to heal faster than Kim and will be available for the World Cup. And moving over to the LPGA, where the ShopRite LPGA Classic begin their 4-day event. But for world #1 Park Geun-hye, she must do well this week in order to hold on to her #1 title. Now, Park Geun-hye, who sits at the top of the LPGA ranking for the 59th straight week, missed her cut last weekend during the Airbus LPGA Classic and must finish higher than Stacy Lewis this week. Meanwhile, Stacy Lewis, who won the North Texas LPGA Shootout earlier this season, only trails Park Geun-hye by 0.22 points as she hopes to capitalize on the recent struggles of Park Geun-hye. And moving over to some Thursday night's KBO action, the NC Dinos crushed the Hanwha Eagles for the 3rd straight night, 15-7, with the Tucson Bears hanging on to beat the Kia Tigers 15-10. And the Samsung Lions take the series with a 4-2 win over the LG Twins. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the SK Wyverns take on the Nexen Heroes. Of course, going into the game here, first inning, EJ won with an RBI ground out to second, gives the SK Wyverns the 1-0 lead before Kim Gang-min makes it 2-0 with an RBI single to left center. Now still in the top of the first inning, bases loaded for Park Geun-hye, and he singles to left center. This scores 2, and it's now 4-0. We go over to the second inning of the game. Seogun Chang, an RBI single to center, and it's 4-1 before Itae-gun, the next batter, makes it 4-2 with a sac fly to right. SK continues to cruise through, up 5-3 in the ninth. Bases loaded, Park Jung-kwon, and there it goes, deep to right field. A grand slam, and it's 9-3. Now, Kang Jong-ho would add a solo shot in the bottom of the ninth inning, but no matter as the SK Wyverns beat the Nexen Heroes 9-4, your final score. And finishing things on, Pyeongchang will be hosting the next Winter Olympics in 2018, and organizers are doing all they can to prepare for the event. But how about the 2022 Winter Games? Well, the bidding for the rights to the 2022 Winter Olympics is now down to 4 cities, as Almaty, Beijing, Lviv, and Oslo will look to host the Winter Games after Pyeongchang. The Polish city of Krakow, which was also in the hunt for the bidding rights, pulled out after nearly 70% of the citizens were against the idea of hosting the Winter Games. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, temperatures in Daegu was 35.6 degrees Celsius yesterday, marked as the hottest day in May in 52 years. And some regions down south are already suffering from tropical nights. Well, today should be hotter than yesterday, with temperatures soaring to low to mid-30s. But the air is much cleaner than yesterday in most regions, but southeast areas in Jeju should deal with relatively high level of dust particles, so please be aware of that. And with plenty of sunshine, the UV level will continue to be high, so have your sun protection ready before heading out. And it seems like this hot and sunny weather conditions will persist throughout the weekend. Well, Jindo should also have a mostly sunny day. Winds and waves remain calm while the currents in the water continues to be fast. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. Behind the capital in Gwangju will rise to 32, while Busan climbs to 27 later on. Now, for other regions, down on Jeju and Dokdo should see a high of 28, while Mount Keungang tops out at 22. That's all for now, but I'll be back with more updates after noon.
Well, that's all for now. We'll be back with another newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.